All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a round of coffee and questions, or if it's later in the day, kicking back, having your favorite drink. What are we going to talk about today? Okay, we're going to talk about the next step in accumulating some tools for basic welding and a lot of art, fun projects or whatever you want to do. We'll talk about anvils. Now, here's the thing about anvils. You're gonna get what you pay for, and we're going to switch inside. I'll make some comments about the ones that you can get out at Harbor Freight and make it easy. Unless you're doing something super light duty, I would kind of steer away from them, and we'll talk about those when I switch inside. So what I have here are two anvils. Now this one was kind of handed down, within the family. This one was made October 1901. Okay, and so this one I used for quite a while, even though it's got a little piece broken here on the back. This is a heavy duty anvil, and the thing about an anvil is it'll last a lifetime and more. And then as a gift I got this one here, which is much more like on the horn right here. This is something more maybe a shoer would use or something like that, and I got this as a gift because I was doing a lot of metal bending and all kinds of things, and it's got the preacher and the hardy holes, and it's got everything that this one doesn't have, and this was a little nicer to use. Okay, but it depends on what you're going to do at home, and so then you make the decision, because they're expensive. Now what I would tell you, the best thing to do is see if you can come across one of the older American made ones, and by looking on classifieds and Craigslist, and that is going to give you your best value. Otherwise you can easily spend $300, $400, $800, whatever. It can get very costly, to buy one brand new, unless you're going to be using it like a whole bunch. But if you're just starting out and you want to get some basic tools, you're going to need an anvil, and you're going to need a way to anchor that anvil down, to use it. And we'll go over all that. I'll give you some examples of some fun projects. When you do get an anvil, what you can do to, make your own little station and what have you. But the first go around, what's the easiest thing? Look for the older American made ones, and that way you're not spending, an enormous amount of money to get a good quality one. And you don't want that lower end El Cheapo ones either. So we're going to talk about that in a sec. So let's go ahead. We'll switch inside. Like I said, this one right here, this definitely withstood its time frame. And I'm sitting there thinking, if it goes all the way back to the 1901, October 1901, you got to wonder what all this thing has seen and what all it's been through. This one is the newer version, of course. It's bigger, and this is probably something a farrier would use. And it was a nice gift. I've used the crap out of it. I don't think I put any dings or dents in this, and it holds up incredibly well. But let's switch inside, and let's go ahead and we'll go over some specifics and some do's and some don'ts and some stay away froms. So I'll see you inside. All right, folks, so switched inside, brought up Harbor Freight Central Forge, the 55-pound rugged cast iron anvil here. And is it any good? I would tell you, if it's super light duty, yeah, you might be able to get away with it. Otherwise, I'd steer away from it. This thing is going to dent easily. It's made out of very soft metal. Some people figure, hey, $1 a pound, this is a good deal. No 20% off on this, applied. It's just not worth the price is what I'm saying. It's got a lot of imperfections, and they actually use like auto body filler and went over it and then painted it. And so that comment's true. I read that in the comments, and one of the people out of the club had bought one of these and actually damaged it. So he went ahead and took it apart. And he also found on the inside there were big voids, and it was filled with like some kind of light sand material and BBs. So it's not something I would recommend buying, like I said, unless it was super, light duty. Now, another question out there is, what's the cheapest way to get an anvil, a good one, and get going? Well, you can take a look around and see if there's any railroad ties or an I-beam or something, and you can actually kind of form and play around with those. And I'll show you some examples in a little bit, because I'm going to show you some slides on how to make an anvil stand. Kind of a DIY project. It's kind of a fun project, actually, after you get an anvil. But yeah, that's what I would tell you. Now, the horn on this, it isn't exactly, you know, flat. I mean, it's very rough. I mean, it's okay for some crude, you know, bending, but it's not going to stand up to you really hitting this with a hammer. The metal on this is so cheap and the quality control is so poor, it's just, you're not going to like it in the long run. I mean, I would tell you, hang on to that $68, add some more money to it. See if you can find, like I said, a good American made, you know, even an old time anvil. I mean, they last a lifetime, like I said, plus, I mean, if you get a good one. And you can look on the classified Craigslist, keep your eye out if you're not in a hurry. I'm sure that you'll run across one, you know, I mean, eventually. What do I suggest in terms of anvil? Well, for light duty stuff around, you know, your shop, 55 pounds good, 100 pounds better. I mean, it depends on what you run across. I mean, when you decide to go ahead and buy one and what your usage is going to be. Now, why do I say that about the internal part being filled with, you know, BBs and sand? Well, because it's true. Because it was manufactured overseas where they probably don't have a quality control department and, you know, any of the imperfections. And so why would they do that? Well, it meets the weight requirement that way. So they'll fill it with sand and BBs. It gets them the weight requirement. They plug over it, put a little Bondo on there and paint, and then they figure, well, Americans will buy it. And they're right. I mean, we do. But the purpose of the review is just to try to tell you this isn't the best bang for your buck. Okay, so out at the club, I had one of the members, we've got a club that's 15, 20 members. We go to Lowe's, Home Depot, Harbor Freight. We look around for tools, deals, and we demo them with each other and critique them. And then we decide whether or not, you know, as club members, we want to buy one and so forth. But it gives us a chance to sample lots of different tools. Anyway, the comment made to me was, well, it's better than no anvil at all. And I told him, yeah, well, I would rather have no anvil at all. I mean, because I agree with the comment that was written. You can go out to Harbor Freight and buy one of their big sledgehammers, cut the handle off of it, and figure out a way to secure it. And there you have yourself a small anvil that's better than the metal that these actual anvils right here are made out of. So, no, I disagree with you. Is it better than no anvil? I'd rather have the money and just not buy it then. I mean, and just steer away from it. So I'll read to you a comment that somebody had made. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad comment, but I am going to comment on their comment here in a second. They said, well, there is a way to fix the problem with these El Cheapo kind of anvils. And so I was reading it. It said, go out and get yourself some real thick plate steel and go ahead and put it on the top and the sides, you know, and you can weld it on there and so forth. And then you can reform and re-drill that hardy hole, and you can smooth down and out the edges and round it out, and you can drill additional holes into it if you want to, you know, for additional holes and sizes and so forth, depending on your projects. And then you round off the corners, like I was saying, and that way, you know, you don't need to worry about chipping and stuff, because of the rounded corners, you'll have, you know, less opportunity to chip and damage it. And he went on about this, and I go, look, that's fine. Should you have to go through that? No, and I don't want to. It's almost like you're building another anvil. But if somebody had this and, you know, you're past the warranty period and you're stuck with it, and all of a sudden you realize this thing is just kind of crap, you could go out to the steel supplier and take a look in the scrap pile. A lot of times they sell off things real cheap, because you're not talking about a lot of plate steel here, and find some good thick plate steel. And yeah, they're right. You could go ahead and create a top and sides for this, weld them on there real well, and then round off those, you know, those sharp edges, corners, and you'd have an okay working anvil again. So I would tell you, yeah, if you're stuck with one of these and you're disappointed, that's kind of a fun DIY project. I mean, for me, looking at it and, you know, acquiring it in the beginning, just stay away from it and find a better quality anvil. That's what I'm saying. Another question somebody wrote, and there was an answer to it, is if you're looking at a railroad track or an I-beam, you know, to use, or, and I'll show you pictures, like I said, of how people have done this. You know, how do you know? Well, figure 4 feet of it is about 60 pounds. I mean, so you can kind of gauge it off of that. You may not need a 100-pound anvil, you know. Run across it on a deal or something like that, that's one thing. But, I mean, if you want to make one, yeah, you can use railroad steel, I-beam, and you can form it yourself. I mean, yeah, that's a good idea. It's a good DIY project. And for the DIYer home hobbyist, that would work. Okay, now let me show you a picture of mine, but this is the one I said that was gifted to me. It's a little bit more costly. You'll be able to see the difference here real quick, and then we're going to move into how you can create your own stand, which is a fun project once you have that anvil. Okay, so this is a picture off of the web of the one that I have out in the garage that I showed you at the beginning of the video. And this more than suits my needs. It's actually, to be truthful, overkill, because there's a lot of things on here I probably won't use. This is more meant for a farrier, but it's a beautiful anvil. It's nice to have, okay? But like I said, see if you can run across one and then create the stand. And here we go. Let me show you some pictures. Okay, here's one. It's a little bit blurry. Now, whether you use 4x4s, 6x6s, whatever you can get your hands on, and you create this wood block looking table thing by using chop saw, let's say, or whatever way you want to saw through it, and you get it the correct height, okay? Then he went around it and banded it, with metal. Now, this is cold rolled steel, whether you get it like an inch or two wide or whatever, and you band it like this, and then he put bolts on it. That's a good idea, creates a lot of stability, and then he put a chain around it, and you can see how he secured it in on the side so it doesn't move around. So you can do this. It's a fun, easy project. Let me show you a few more and give you a few more ideas. Okay, here's one somebody did. Not a fan of the plywood top kind of a thing on there, but look, I mean, if you got it big and wide enough, I suppose you could put a vise on there too, but the interesting part is he put a couple of those, they look like Harbor Freight wheels on the bottom. That way it makes it much more mobile. Probably a good idea. Again, he used the strapping around it. You can see here in the picture. You can hit pause if any of these are something you want to make, but let's keep moving. Okay, now this one I exploded way up, probably more than I should have for the picture, but this, you can see here where they took and they ground down that I-beam or that piece of railroad track, and they made their own. So that's the first thing you can get out of this. The other thing is how they secured it, and they created, some hammer holders on the side. I mean, you can do lots of fun things. And then the scrap steel, like I said, out your steel supplier, you can get enough scrap steel to where you can play around and have a good time making hangers and whatever you want on these. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, here's a close-up of one of the railroad, I-beams, pieces of steel that you can get. And this guy just kind of cut into it. It's a little crude looking. It's not real pretty. You're not going to win a beauty contest, right? So it's not a beauty contest, but is it functional? Yeah, it was for him. It works good. So this gives you another idea of possibilities, but let's keep going. Okay, so here you got another one where somebody just took, I don't know, it looks like 2x6s, something like that. And they created this base, put a plywood top on it, put a handle on there, and you can see how they put a chain around it and then used a lag bolt to secure it. So another idea, one more. Okay, so here's one where they took some kind of treated outdoor, looks like post kind of lumber, and they did the same thing, used a 2x4, went around it, put the bolts, lag bolts into it, secured it all nice and tight together. And, these holders, I mean, you could also use PVC piping, and then like they did, just drill holes, form it, whatever you want to do. And, or you can make them out of that scrap steel or leather or whatever you want. So these are just some ideas. Anyway, I'm the home handyman, and I hope you click subscribe. If you know something better, drop it in the comment below, like I always say. And these we'll do in a small series, talk about one thing at a time to put together, like I said, some basic tools, for welding. The other thing that I would suggest to you, if you don't have it, just keep an eye on those classifieds, keep an eye on Craigslist. You'll run across something and you'll get a good deal on it. That's my best advice when it comes to anvils. All right, you folks have a great day. I hope I gave you some suggestions on some creative, fun projects you can do just out of scrap lumber and steel. I'll see you on the next video. Have a great day. Bye-bye.